Now, Forbes has released the world's billionaire list of 2024, and there are more billionaires than ever before. 141 have been added to the ranks, bringing the total to 2,781. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg are in the top 4, and pop star, superstar Taylor Swift has been added to the list after her Eras tour generated more than $1 billion in revenue. But with more than 1 in 5 people in the UK living in poverty and the gap between the rich and poor getting wider, is it ever morally acceptable to have that much money? Andy, what's your thoughts?
Of course it's immoral. Of course it's immoral. I've been doing a little bit of maths, actually. If you had $1 million, just to put it in context, and spent £1,000 a day, you would run out of money in 3 years. If you had $1 billion and a billionaire spent the same amount each day, it would take you 2,740 years. So how far out of reach is a millionaire from the average person? A billionaire is like the moon versus Uranus. It's a long, long way off. Look, you make a choice to be a billionaire because you have chosen to keep much more money than you could ever possibly spend in your entire life. No one can spend
earned it.
100 billion. Have you earned it after a certain point? You haven't earned it. Are you working harder than an A&E nurse? Are you working harder than a guy who's, for that matter, worth 100 million? It gets to a point where it goes beyond any sense of sanity or rationality. And when you're sitting there on a mountain, an Everest of cash like that, while there are people dying in this world of poverty and struggling to get by. You know, we've had over a decade now, 2 decades, I would say, of living standards going down, of people finding it harder and harder to get by. You simply cannot spend that amount of money. What on earth are you doing holding on to it?
Maybe they're just sitting looking at it, but is that morally unacceptable, Lin?
I can see why people would say it is immoral, but I also think it's immoral when many people now have come from somewhat humble beginnings or, you know, not extravagant beginnings, and they've really clawed their way to success, whether that's via innovation, whether that's via, you know, galvanizing the right team together. If you look at so many people like Steve Jobs, who was adopted, you know, now most of us have Apple. If you look at even the creator of Louis Vuitton, he was a poor boy born in the 18th century who walked from a village because he had this dream, and now obviously LVMH is massive. But my point is that it's not just about, you know, unfettered, lazy, wealthy people that have managed to just land on their backside with loads of money. These are people that have created loads of things. What I would say is, I think it's awful that we are not regulating the amount they're making. So, for example, if we look at Amazon, Jeff Bezos, he is not taxed how your local shopkeeper would be because online businesses are not heavily taxed like those who have to pay business rates. That's where I think is awful and something should be done. But I don't think we should penalise people for being innovators, creators, and, you know, really generating wealth because of their work.
Why do they have to do it under the cosh? Why do they have to be forced by a government to do the right thing? And a lot of these people will profess to be moral. They'll profess to be maybe religious, or they'll profess to have morality. Why do we have to say to them, the law says you've got to be a good, decent human being? They should.
By what?
When you hit like 200 million, there should be an automatic trigger that goes off in your head saying, I'm going to build an orphanage. You know, in the Victorian times, as a historical fiction author, philanthropy used to be the thing you're proud of. Now it's a number.
But I think the reason why so many of these millionaires and billionaires, they give so much because they're not massively controlled. If we look at Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, she's given away over 12 billion. Now, if she was dictated to, maybe she would. Why should I have to give away? From the goodness, many of these people, they give away so much. If we look at Oprah Winfrey, came from humble beginnings, worked really hard. She's given away over 400 million. So, and it's relative, isn't it? It's easy for us, the small guys, to be like, you horrible billionaire. But then, okay, do you have a TV in your bedroom?
No, my flat is so small, my bedroom is my living room. So you could argue, yes. Even though I'm worth £2 billion, I live very small and the rest of the money goes to orphanages.
But what I'm saying is, we have this privilege here, even if you wanted to, you can have 3 meals a day. Imagine if I come up to you and say, how could you have 3 meals when there's people in Africa and Asia that only have 1, if that? It's relative. We can all point our fingers, but why should we have to? Why should we penalise people? If we start to penalise them, there's so many jobs jobs created because of Amazon, created because of Apple. I create videos on my Apple phone because of people like Steve Jobs.
When you get to that level of wealth, you are at a point where actually you could solve world hunger.
It's been disproved.
Change the world.
World hunger is not because of a lack of money. It's because of a lack of the elements. It's a lack of due to global warming. It's due to famine.
I'm sure would disagree. If you buy them a meal, they're not.
You can't solve world hunger by getting rid of billionaires.
I am wondering though whether you think it is a coincidence that we have more billionaires than ever before, and we have an increasingly widening gap between the rich and the poor. Is that a coincidence, or are the two linked in some way?
Again, I think this is contextual. I've never seen in my lifetime so many young innovators, using social media, making far more than any 17, 18, 19-year-old we've ever made just being in retail in JD Sports, for example. We're seeing young people using and creating different methods.
We're also seeing people in actual poverty, children in poverty. And those numbers are going up along with the number of billionaires.
I don't think that's because Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk has done massively well. I don't think those two are, intrinsically linked whatsoever.
We're talking here about a tiny minority. The majority of young people, the majority of people of all ages, they work in shops, they work in schools, they work in hospitals, they do jobs that we actually need them to do, by the way, for our society to function. They can't all be, millionaire TikTokers. The truth is that most of us are under the cosh of these big companies that are very happy to pay minimum wage and will be, secretly telling politicians, please don't put the minimum wage up, we can't afford it, while they're not paying tax. And
that's what I disagree with.
Afford to pay them so much more.
The other argument to this is if we start taking away the money from these billionaires, we'll lose jobs if they have
taking money away from these billionaires.
Yeah, if
I
we
almost
start
felt
taking,
sorry for a second.
Did you?
No.
So you start taking them away. We'll have less jobs. They are the job creators.
How does that work? No, if someone's worth 100 and something billion and then they end up being worth only 20 billion, I think they'll still be running their company.
I think this is a lack of knowledge as well. When we hear Jeff Bezos has however many billion, he doesn't have liquid billion in his bank account right now. I'm not disputing the fact that he's very wealthy, but we don't take into... He
could sell a couple of companies and or a few shares.
But like you said, if he sells the companies, what will happen to those careers? I've spoken to so many people that work for Amazon. Yes, sometimes the conditions are not the best. However, we've all benefited from Amazon. We've all benefited from having iPhones. We've all benefited from these conglomerates, these massive companies that took... If you look at Jeff Bezos's actual journey, where he had an awful little office and worked his socks off to get to where he was. Now, my thing is, if we start to demonise, and we already do, society already demonises billionaires, if we do it even more so where there's regulation around it, how will we get that same innovation?
So you think this is politics of envy? I wonder whether actually they're a self-selecting group, because you're asking why would you need that much money? Of course you don't. But these people are so, propelled forward by whether it's money or whether it's creating something that they're never going to stop. Do give us a call. What do you think? Is it immoral to be a billionaire? 0207 862 2222 is the number, and we're going to speak to Broderick from London first. Oh, we've lost Broderick. I'm going to read a few messages and hopefully we'll manage to get him back. So we've had a few comments coming in on X. David on Twitter says, of course it's morally wrong. No one makes $1 billion. They take it. Oh, and it's those that they walk all over that suffer. It is obscene to have that much money when the world is in such a state. Do you think that, hold on, I know, Lynn, you won't think that, but actually, Andy, do you think every millionaire that has earned that much money has made it on the backs of others? They've taken it, it's almost stolen money rather than earned?
Well, I don't know. We live in a capitalist world, and capitalism does work, that things are the value that they're bought for, and people make profit and they live off that profit. And I understand that as part of our economy, it needs to grow for us all to be wealthy. I buy into that. Certain other people wouldn't. What we've lost though is a sense of context and a sense of rational thought. In 1942, did you know that President Roosevelt actually suggested during the war that there be a $25,000 cap on all incomes in the United States? That was Roosevelt imposed that. Now
that sounds like communism. That's what that is.
It was brought in because it was recognised we need a lot of money here, and there is a massive imbalance between rich and poor, and rich people can stand up now and sort out some of the ills in the world. But then, it sounds like such a ridiculous idea to us today because we've been brainwashed into this idea that success must mean greater and greater wealth.
But let me quickly ask a question. And for those, watching and about to call in, if we're going to say it's immoral to be a billionaire, is it not immoral for the government to then take away loads of money from someone or dictate and control our life as well? At what point, what would you suggest?
That's what government does, right?
Well, they do via taxes already. These people are taxed. We can argue not
benefit
enough.
of society.
Not enough. I can agree with that. However, what would you do then? Taylor Swift is successful. She's made billions because loads of people like her art.
Pay compensation to everyone who's had to listen to her music.
Oh, wait, Andy.
What would you do then?
I've lost the crowd.
Would you say that she should be capped and all money should go to the government? Because we know if the government takes that money, they're not going to do anything positive with it, as we know.
Being serious, well, there are positive things that the government does with money. I know it wastes money left, right and centre, and there are wars and things that we don't agree with. I get that. However, we do need money to run the NHS, run schools, rebuild schools and have building programmes and hopefully buy some new houses so that people who are on lower incomes can buy them. Deep breath. But if you're Taylor Swift, if you're Jeff Bezos, if you're Elon Musk, you are sitting there at least for 5 minutes a day thinking, I'm a billionaire. And how does that thought process not finish with, I should probably give the homeless people some money?
You're sounding a bit...
Get
what
there?
if your books make you a billionaire? What are you going to do?
Well, J.K. Rowling, I think, is the only billionaire author on the planet
It's possible,
now. That's
then.
a question you could ask
There's probably
Joanne
room for
Rowling.
another one there, Andy.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. If there's space, I'll take it. And my next book, The Betrayal of Thomas True, is well worth pre-ordering to make me a billionaire.
Plug.
But I always plug when I come on. No, but if I had £1 billion, I just feel as though my thought process would end. I should probably go out and give someone some money.
But that's what they are doing. 400 million, Oprah. Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, over 12 billion. She gave away. Now, she's able to do that because she became a billionaire.
I suppose the question is whether that should be an option or mandated over a certain amount of money.
We shouldn't give the government that much control over our money.
Derek on X says, morally it is wrong, but if you're a billionaire, would you give it up? That's you asking yourself. You would give it up, Andy?
Yes, not all of it. All but maybe 200 million. I'd keep a smidge
so
for myself. 200
million is
You say
acceptable.
that.
I feel like 200 million is enough to get by.
Well, this is also part of the problem, isn't it? It's like if we're saying that it is immoral to be a billionaire, fine, because that's out of reach for most people. And then are we saying it's immoral to be a millionaire because that's an awful lot of money
to people?
And so,
to people in the Congo on $2 a day, no one should really even be on 50,000.
Like 200 million is
relative.
I think it's
relative.
looking at your ability to live a safe, healthy, warm, dry, clothed life and maybe to look after the loved ones in your immediate circle. If you can do those things without worrying about the next letter dropping on the mat or the next email coming through, chasing bills, then I think you're okay. Anything above that, maybe you do talk about morality.
But that's a struggle to some on 100,000 a year here.
Well, I guess if you live in Pimlico.
If you have a family and 4 small children, nursery age, around that age, and your mortgage is $3,000 a month, 100,000 now is not enough. So it's relative, isn't it?
Well, it is relative.
Let's go to the calls. Paul from Warrington, what's your thoughts? Is it morally unacceptable to be a billionaire?
Absolutely not.
Yes.
Perfectly okay to be a billionaire.
Are you a billionaire, Paul?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so you've got no skin in the game in this. So that's fine, just checking. I thought we might have got lucky and maybe some billionaires going to call and defend themselves. Paul, why do you think it's acceptable then? I mean, you're not going to be able to spend that money in your lifetime.
Well, no, it's just because people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are worth however many billion dollars or pounds, it doesn't mean they have all that sat in the bank account as ready cash. That's what their assets are worth.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but they could sell their assets.
Yeah, but then if they sell their assets, all those people lose their jobs.
And they can't sell their assets.
But I can take this on. I think let's.
can't.
Sorry to speak.
Paul,
let me give you an example, right? I don't know if you've heard. There's a show on at the moment called We Crashed about the WeWork empire, and as part of that, it's I think stated that the guy who owned it and then the company crashed still has 1.7 billion in his bank account, even though he crashed the entire company. Now, that's not kind of ethereal, magical, mercurial money. That is actual money in his bank account. So this idea that billionaires don't actually have that much money is a myth.
No, but they have shareholders, they have people they have to report to. You've said one anecdotal example, but if you look at Elon Musk, for example, he was scrabbling around for shareholders. That X wasn't all his investment. you know?
But he is a billionaire. I mean, he could sell Twitter and he could get rid of, his funny-shaped cars and things, couldn't he? And he'd still have £1 billion in the bank.
But Paul's got a fair point. Yeah, but what would happen to all the employees of Tesla? What would happen to all the employees of Twitter? I mean, the likelihood is another billionaire will come along and buy it. But if that didn't happen and we were getting rid of all the billionaires, then they would cease to have a job.
We benefit from their creations. That's the reality. We do benefit. And if the moment you start telling people you cannot go out there and innovate and create, you're going to see a slump in creation, and we're not going to have people inspired to go out there
Lynn,
and work.
I'm absolutely hearing you with that, except for number 2 and number 3.
Let's have a look.
Let's see, on this list. So we're talking Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos
He
here.
created Tesla.
Yeah, but they're also just trying to literally burn money into space. They're just trying to get rockets out of the atmosphere. Is that useful to us?
Well, when it comes to
people starving in this world?
if you look at their projects, to us, the small guys, we may have no concept of what their projects are now, but in the future, Elon Musk trying to extend life or, the ability of our brain. I'm not saying I agree with all of his things. However, if you would have said to me 20 years ago, oh, you're going to have a phone that you can put your face in and it will open it up, I'd be like, oh, that's a bit weird as well. These are inventors and creators that are going to dictate our future for the good and maybe not so for the good.
Is that selling it to you, Andy?
Well, I like the idea of space rockets.
Well,
I'm well there. If they all spent the money on space rockets,
in the moon.
It'd be great. I could have a holiday on the moon. I'd rather go to Broadstairs. Actually, they've got better fish and chips. But no, what they spend their money on is kind of a different question. What we're actually dealing with here at the core of this is a total lack of connection between the value of things and their material reality. Businesses used to be worth a lot of money. They didn't used to be worth this much. The valuations of these companies and the amount of wealth these people are accruing has gone up 120% in the last 10
We've done that.
years.
We've done
the last
that.
decade, these people's wealth has doubled, more than doubled.
We've done that. When was the last time you ordered from Amazon?
Recently.
I
ordered my book. No.
I order from Amazon every week. We can criticise these people while still buying an Apple iPhone, while ordering from Amazon.
Yeah, but I'd rather do it,
we have made
for a
them
more sensible price.
We've made them successful.
Okay, back to the calls. Paul from Lancashire, what's your views on billionaires? I was about to say millionaires there, but billionaires.
Yeah, I think billionaires, have nothing against them. But I think the amount of tax should be really, really high.
What are we, 96%?
Well, I'd say 100%.
Okay, well, right. So, that would suggest that you would have a cap on the amount of money that any one person could have?
Well, it's like they said, you're never going to spend $1 billion in a lifetime.
Mm-hmm. No, but you can pass it on. You can pass it on to your kids. I mean, that would be taxed again.
Yeah, that's true. You could pass it on to your children. Yeah, but at the end of the day, they're not going to go short kiddies in a family like that.
No, they're not. But Paul, you started off by saying they should be taxed heavily, and then went to 100%, which would mean that there would be a cap after which you think that nobody should be able to earn any other money, and all that money should be taken by the government. Now, what is that cap for you then? Is it the 200 million that Andy thinks is acceptable?
Well, all right then, say 96.
96%. Okay, so they get to make 4p on every pound that they earn. Maybe that's the way to go.
What Paul's saying is again, not as revolutionary as it may sound. Franklin D. Roosevelt was saying exactly that, 100% tax rate on income over a certain amount.
That is control.
Paul, thank you for your call. Thanks for all your calls on this. It's been an actually very interesting conversation.